Hey guys, it's Kris Jones for episode 73 of Ask Me Anything. As promised, I promised you that I would welcome Chris Nash back to my AMA series. Chris is the president of LSEO. He and I have been friends for nearly 2 decades. He is a digital marketing, e-commerce veteran and an entrepreneur, fellow entrepreneur. So what we're going to do over the next 3 videos, this is going to be a 3-part series. I mentioned to you in the setup video that success requires you to think like a strategist. It requires that you work on your business, not in your business at times. Everyone that has ever run a business can relate to that feeling when you come into the office and you feel like you have more problems than you know what to do with. You get so consumed within that environment that you feel powerless. You feel disempowered to do the kind of things that are necessary to build a kick-ass business. So what Chris and I are going to do over these next couple videos, we're going to kind of provide you with the structure that we've used to build multiple successful businesses we're currently using to polish up and scale the LSEO business together. The 3 things we're going to talk to you about are planning, procedures, and policies. Today we're going to talk about planning. And so let's talk about this. So in setting up for this video, we talked about this idea of a strategist versus a tactician. Mm-hmm. Let's talk more about that.
I think that, to your point about most people in an organization spend their days putting out fires. Mm-hmm. I'm guilty of it too. I think we're all guilty of it. And to use the most simplistic example that I think everyone can relate to, because I think it's good to show examples. Most people that come in the morning sit down at the desk, and what's the first thing they do? They check their email.
Yeah.
And what do? They start responding to the immediate concerns at the top. Mm-hmm. And I consider that the equivalent of putting out fires. Yeah. And I do it too. But a more strategic approach to that would be to, let's say, carve out a portion of your day mm-hmm. where you choose to respond to email and take care of those things, but you plan out the rest of your day mm-hmm. like a strategist and decide, okay, I'm going to tackle these clients. Mm-hmm. Let's say you're in sales. I'm going to call these clients at this date. I'm going to mm-hmm. get my discovery calls over at this time. I'm going to use this time to respond to emails. I'm going to spend this amount of time mm-hmm. in meetings during the day. That's an example of the way you may strategize your day versus mm-hmm. just coming in and starting a task-oriented process where you mm-hmm. just hit the ground and start, doing and doing mm-hmm. and doing, mm-hmm. not taking a step back and looking at the company and going, wait a second, or your process and going, how can I make this better? How can I mm-hmm. think about it like a strategist? So I think the difference when you're talking about strategy versus tactician, it's a matter of stepping outside, thinking about whatever it is you're about to do and making a plan for a long-term goal versus an immediate goal. I think that's probably the biggest difference. It's long-term mm-hmm. versus short-term.
I've shared this story with my viewers, but I think I've mentioned it to you. So I'm 14 years old. I'm driving down Market Street in Kingston, here in northeastern Pennsylvania, and I pass a hoagie shop. And immediately I start thinking to myself, how many hoagies do you have to sell in order to make $1 million? Selling the hoagie is the tactic.
For sure.
The strategist is thinking, how do I make $1 million? And in my case, I was like, shit, this guy ain't going to make $1 million in that little place because you can't produce that many hoagies. But if he's able to perfect how he makes the hoagies, build up a loyal customer following, open up additional locations, he's well on his way. That's the strategist in me. Chet Holmes in the book, The Ultimate Sales Machine, talks about this idea that elite entrepreneurs, and this is one of the few times that I'll actually toot my own horn. If you guys are looking for reasons why folks like Chris and I have been successful, Chet Holmes says that about 1% of entrepreneurs are both strategists and tacticians. They're able to join the two together to execute on their business idea. And again, that story of when I was a teenager, I'm sure you could go back to your early days of All About Dance and you thought to yourself, what were some of the, just reflect on that real quick. How did you go from this idea of helping your buddy Joe build out a website to becoming the nation's second largest discount dancewear provider?
I think it's a perfect example because I've made these mistakes over and over and been overly focused on being the tactician. In the beginning, we chose to build a website. We started to put a plan in place to obviously have orders come in the door, and then we just dealt with it as it came. We didn't think long term. We didn't know what our outcome was, and I think the difference is, and I think the times I've been most successful in my life, I've thought long term about what I was going to do. You know, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to learn this, and then I'm going to take that skill set and turn it into something. Yeah. I knew in my heart that I was going to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't necessarily know exactly how that was going to translate into a business. So all about dance, just to use that example, I think one of the greatest, just to look back and, thinking about how I learned to start being a strategist was when we moved 3 times in a 5-year period. And we moved out of 2 buildings. And it was an absolute nightmare for the company to take that quantity of inventory. So in the 3rd move, we actually planned it. We researched it. We looked up the information. We saw that you have to plan for 8 years to make it cost effective. And we moved into a large building, and eventually the company was acquired because we moved into a space. We bought automated equipment to be able to pick and pack out of the warehouse. And all of that was governed by a plan. So we learned it the hard way by just doing it the first 2 times and kind of, just fighting through the process. But then the 3rd time we actually made a plan for it. And I think that's exactly the difference. Sometimes you have to get your butt kicked a little bit, though, before you step back and say, listen, I'm not going to do it the same way I've done it before and just make a mess of it.
Which is the 2 things I want to chat about are, one is growth, right? Sales and marketing strategy. And then this other reality in the marketplace that at any given time only a very small fraction of people are actually interested in buying your stuff, yet we like to hit them over the head
for sure
and try to convince them, even though it's impossible to convince someone who's not in a buying mode to do it. So first sales and marketing. Second is this that reality, and maybe offer some tips to the audience here about things they could use. So sales and marketing, I think planning here, this is one of those areas that I could kick myself sometimes. Can't you guys relate to allowing 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, God forbid, go by without actually having a plan to get to where you want to go? I mean, if you're going to develop OCD in any way, like I have, I apply mine to, when I can, to being successful, right? And I think planning around your growth strategy, right? Just use the hoagie example again. Where do you want to be in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? And so can you reflect on, and we're going to get into some of the procedures that folks could put in place and policies in the next 2 videos. But what are some of the things that you would be doing to plan for success in executing a sales and growth strategy?
I think if you think about sales, again, the tactician would just pick up the phone call and maybe in the back of his mind he knows, okay, I need to build rapport to help close a sale. And that's a tactic. Building rapport in a sales call is something that people understand. That would be defined as a tactic. A strategy may be, what are we going to do to make sure that when we call this, let's say our top 100 potential buyers, how are we going to get them on the phone? How are they going to be interested in the product? And how are we going to build rapport? So again, this is something that Chet Holmes talks about in the Ultimate Sales Machine as well. But one of the ideas is to use market research to educate the customer and present the opportunity where they feel like you're actually bringing them value. So he uses this great example with carpet cleaning. Where he looks up this market data related to the cleanliness of a home and sicknesses, and people who don't clean their carpets as often as they should, they find that people in that household get sick more often. Well, you take that data now, and this is literally like data that you can go get in the market, and you showcase that and bring it in front of the customer at like educational marketing, and now you reframe the conversation in a way where you're actually providing value to them and showing them that, hey, listen, if you clean your carpet regularly, your family is going to actually be healthier. So now you're bringing something healthy to the table. And you can package that up in a process and deliver it across your whole sales organization and present that information on future calls. So now you're not just picking up the phone call and winging it, saying, oh, well, I'm going to build some rapport. Hopefully this guy will like me and I might get a sale. Now you actually have an approach for every single phone call you pick up. That's a good example, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the approach that you're sharing, this idea of educational research and almost turning people that aren't existing buyers into either buyers, even though they weren't, or getting them, prepping them, molding them into a buyer. And the thing I love about educational marketing, and I've talked about this in previous AMAs, is that you guys are going to end up selling a lot more stuff when you stop freaking selling and beating people over the head to buy your stuff, and you start just focusing on how you could add value. I mean, my whole belief system, my whole ethos over the last decade plus hasn't been on how much money I could make. It's in how I could build products and services that solve problems and serve people. And again, whether or not that's true or not, that's how my brain works. And I think that that's why I love educational marketing. And Chet Holmes, who Kris mentioned, you guys know I've talked about this book. I've recommended you buy this book. If you haven't bought this book, buy this book right now.
It's one of our Bibles for sure.
Yeah, and I've been using it for years as really a backdrop of a lot of my businesses to help put in place the proper planning, the procedures, and the policies. And so I'm going to go ahead and end video 73 on that note. We'll see you guys soon in video 74. We're going to chat with you then about procedures, and we're going to take this idea of being a strategist to the next level. Do you want to come with us? We'll see you in the next video. Peace.